Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Dan Winter. I'm the Assistant Chief of Police for the Santa Clara Police Department. We really appreciate you coming out. I guess I'll be your master of ceremonies for this brief meeting. Please, there's agendas up there, there's waters up there, there's cookies, there's flyers, there's magnets for your fridge, there's all sorts of stuff up there, so please take advantage of that. We're going to kick the meeting off by having both our mayor and our vice mayor, Mayor Lisa Gilmore and Vice Mayor Kathy Watanabe, come up and introduce the meeting and themselves.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Gilmore, Mayor of Santa Clara. Thank you all so much for being here. This is a really important topic today, and I know that it's being recorded so that we can show it on our city website and I think on Facebook and other places, you know, over and over, because there is a lot of interest in this incident. I want to, first of all, introduce the council members that are here today. First of all, we have Vice Mayor Kathy Watanabe, who's here, and Kathy's the one who represents this District 1 where this incident happened, and she is the one that organized this community meeting today. So thank you very much, Vice Mayor Watanabe. We'll be hearing from you in just a few seconds. Also, we have Councilmember Teresa O'Neill, who's here, and Councilmember Debbie Davis. Thank you all for joining us today. So again, this is a very important topic. This is an incident that has disturbed us. It's very disturbing, not just for this neighborhood here, but for the city as a whole. And so again, I want to thank Vice Mayor Watanabe for putting this together so that we can hear from our police department, hear from the Sobrato Living Center, and hear from the community and answer questions for all the representatives that are here. We hope you have questions as well. I'm sure the council members that will have our own questions about the incident. But I'd like to now turn this over to Vice Mayor Watanabe so that she can introduce this meeting today. Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. We're all a little under the weather right now, so I hope I don't have a coughing fit. I've been taking care of this cold for the last 3 days, and but it was very important to be here today because, as the mayor said, this was a very serious incident that happened in our neighborhood almost 2 weeks ago. And I actually heard it myself. Did anybody else hear it? Okay, couple folks heard it. Okay, and I was just literally putting my head down to go to sleep when I heard the shots. And I didn't quite really believe what I was hearing. I thought it could be fireworks. But then the next morning when I got up, one of the first things I do is I check my city phone, and there was a message saying that there had been gunfire, and so it confirmed what I had heard. And I reached out to the city manager and I said, can I put out a statement about what happened? And she said, let me put something together, a statement, you know, that you can share with the community. And within 2 hours, she had a statement for me. And just as people were waking up and starting to look right on Nextdoor and say, hey, why is all that yellow tape around Sobrato Living Center? And I was able to post the information and also express to the community that this was a serious incident and it wasn't just going to end there. The next day I did have a meeting with the city manager, and I discussed having a community meeting like today and discuss what happened and what we can do to make sure that things like this don't happen again. And because nothing like this has happened in the city of Santa Clara. And so I'm not going to go into it too much because that's why we have our Assistant Chief of Police and Captain Clark here today to talk about, give us updates about what happened. But more importantly, there are things that we can do as a community to make sure that things like this don't happen again. And I really appreciate the time that Assistant Chief Winter has given me to talk about, you know, what emphasize to the community what can be done to be proactive in making sure that things like this don't happen again. And to, you know, they have the expression, you know, if you see something, say something. It's really true. And there are things that you can look for and identify and do something as soon as you see it. So, and the city has many tools available just on this iPhone. Santa Clara, My Santa Clara is an application on phones that you can download. and be able to submit information, things that you see that you know, maybe have a question about, or you have a picture, maybe some graffiti, something. You can submit it through the application and the city will take care of it. I was very appreciative of, there was some graffiti in the area. I took pictures of it. I submitted it to the city on a Friday. 72 hours later on Monday, it was gone. And so things like that are very important, and they are the kinds of things that help keep your community safe. Before I turn the mic over, I just want to thank our city staff that are here today recording, because they're off as well. So guys, thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you everybody that's here today. Again, this is very important. I appreciate the fact that this will be, sent out to the community going forward. Oh, one more person I want to introduce, Dave Molyneux. He was recently appointed to the Chiefs Advisory Commission, and so and he lives here in the North Side. And I was so glad to see that somebody from the North Side was appointed and will be represented on that commission, because he will be working with the chief and Santa Clara Police Department, and he's also somebody that I can work with, and again, in identifying issues and working together, and more importantly, keeping our neighborhoods safe. So thank you again. I am now going to turn the microphone back over to the Dan Winter and take it away.
Thank you. It is my pleasure now to introduce Captain Kurt Clark. He is in charge of our investigations division at the police department. We have 4 divisions at the police department, each one commanded by a captain. He is going to go over what he can about the shooting investigation. It is an active investigation now, so there just may be things that he is unable to answer, and I'm sure he will tell you that. But if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them, and I'll turn it over to Captain Clark.
Hi, good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well during the holidays. Okay, let me get to the first slide here. Okay, Sobrato Living Center. That's me. Okay, the shooting occurred December 13th of this year, about 12:04 a.m. I just want to take you back to that day when it happened. Here's how the call came into us. As Vice Mayor said, there was shots heard. Our dispatch was called. Officers did go to the scene. And initially, when they got there, they didn't see anything or anyone. So typically what we do, we start checking the surrounding hospitals to see if anyone's injured. And lo and behold, we did find a couple victims at a nearby hospital. We were able to go over to the hospital, contact the victims, and find out what had happened. So working with the victims, we're able to learn that it happened at the Living Center at Sobrato. Now, we knew it happened there, but we didn't know specifically where. So we're able to, by finding evidence in the area, locate a specific area where this happened. So we called out our evidence team, and we started working this case from that location. So typically what our investigators do, we do a neighborhood canvass, we check for video surveillance, we check the local stores that are open. We'll go by, for instance, a 7-Eleven, if obviously that stays open 24 hours. Any businesses that might have seen something or know something, because folks tend to go to these businesses for nourishment or whatever they might need. Cigarettes might be one particular thing they might want. So that's what officers do. They go out and we call it a neighborhood canvass. And in this instance, that's what we did. Our initial patrol team, that's what they do. They do the initial canvass, because that's where we're going to find our leads right away. And that's what they do. They pass that information on to the investigations division. What we do from that point on is we go back and we re-canvass to make sure that we didn't miss anything, because sometimes, we might miss things. So just another layer added to the investigation. And that's where my work group comes in, and we try to solidify that layer and make sure we capture everyone and get the second set of eyes on it. So in this case, that's what we did. Unfortunately, what had happened, we couldn't find many leads out there. So we kept pounding the pavements, looking and looking. And like I said, this case, the assistant chief said, it's an active investigation. We do have leads to follow up on, but it takes time. And that's what we're going through right now. It's that time to investigate this case. Now, what we've learned so far is there was a group of individuals at Sobrato Living Center in the parking lot. In that particular area, that's where the shooting happened. We don't know why it happened other than it happened. We know one of the folks within that group was visiting someone at the Living Center, and that's all we know at this point. So that's the reason why it happened at the Living Center, because this particular group was visiting someone, and after the visit was over, they decided to stay in a parking lot and talk, have a conversation, or do what they do. And that's when the shooting occurred. So that's where we're at in investigation. As far as additional information I can share with you, there are leads we're following up on, but I can't share them because obviously I have to maintain the integrity of the case. But I do want to assure you in this particular incident, I believe, and my investigators believe, it's isolated between these two groups. It's not just a typical, I would say, where the groups were unknown to each other. We believe there's some relationship based on what happened. Because another shooting didn't occur at another location. For instance, if this was an act where you have a random car and individuals within that car just going out and shooting at different objects, persons, or structures, whatever the case may be, that didn't happen in this particular instance. What happened was, it was this particular group, and after that, we didn't get any more calls of shootings in any of our neighboring cities, Sunnyvale or our city as well. So again, the investigation is ongoing. We asking anyone that have any information, please contact our lead investigator, and that's Sergeant Logagrin, and she's available to talk with folks. Now, mind you, from time to time, we do get inundated with phone calls, and we can't return a call immediately, but hopefully within a few hours, she can get back to you, because we prioritize all our leads, and we may farm the leads out to another investigator to follow up on the case. So what I've put up here is just a synopsis of the press release on what we put out. So as you can see, there were about 10 individuals, male and female, that was socializing and drinking in a parking lot in that dark colored sedan. And that's when shots rang out. We're working very closely with our victims in this particular case. The injuries were non-life-threatening, and they will survive. But again, we're working very close with our victims to find out any possible leads and or motives to this case. Again, just to highlight what I've just said, 2 victims, 1 male, 1 female, both released from the hospital. Evidence collected at the scene. We released a press release as quickly as we could to get information out to the community, and we're actively pursuing all our leads, and those are our tip lines. You can use the anonymous tip line, or you can use, you can call Sergeant Logren directly and speak with her, or leave a voicemail. We know folks sometimes don't like to leave their names, but if you want to leave an anonymous tip, call the tip line and we'll get to it. And it's 408-241-9495 for the audience that might be listening to this when they get a chance to see it. And we will get back with you. Other than that, with the incident, that's about all I can share. I do want to say we do try to put press releases up immediately as we can because we realize the community concern and the interest, especially when you have shots fired in a residential community. I mean, if I lived there, I would want to know what's going on. So we did want to get that as quickly as we can, identifying the incident, and we're working with it. And if folks have any questions, they can contact us. At this point, I would like to open for any questions. Got one back there.
So clearly the suspects have not been apprehended.
That is correct.
So they're at large.
They're at large, that's correct. Yeah?
Did the group shoot back at the park?
Yes, there's evidence of that, the group did shoot back. There's some that we believe.
So were the 10 people that were in the parking lot, were they Sobrato residents, or were they still the people, they were the visitors that had come to the Sobrato Center and then they were lingering afterwards?
We're still trying to identify the folks that were there. And that's the concern with some of our investigators. We know 2 of the folks, well, more than 2, but we try to identify the entire group that was there. One of the individuals in the group was visiting someone at the Living Center. That we do know.
Okay.
That's why I believe that's why that brought them to the Living Center.
But they weren't residents themselves.
I'm not sure of that.
Did they happen to notice what type of cars were parked in the parking lot? Was it these little zip cars that we're seeing more and more around the neighborhoods and stuff like that?
As far as the suspect vehicle that shot,
No, like if they get together in a group, they usually have those cars that are racing. They're racing up and down Lafayette all the time, I hear them. And I'm just wondering if that's, because it's always a group, like down the end of my corner where I live, there's like always 10 of those cars getting ready, and then when it gets about 7 o'clock at night, then they all start taking off and going somewhere. So that's kind of like
we do have a vehicle description we're working with, and we have put that out there, which is it's a dark colored sedan. And that's why the importance of surveillance footage and checking the different establishments to see if we could capture any of, vehicles rolling at that time of night or morning rather. Vice Mayor?
Are there any cameras on site that may have caught any?
I am not sure. I know investigators are working with that. The question was, were there any cameras on site? And my response was that we weren't sure. Well, I'm not sure. I'm sure my investigators are, but we're working with that.
No.
Answer, no. Question?
I'm sure I'm not saying something to you that you haven't already checked, but there's an entire set of townhomes that are on Agnew, that direction. I wonder if there would be anybody, because a lot of my neighbors have the cameras in front of their house. I'm just wondering if any of those people live in all those townhomes on Agnew between the condo complex and Saguaro Family Living Center. There's a set of townhomes. Townhomes. I'm just saying it might be something to consider if those people would come out.
I live in that complex.
You do?
Yeah, so some homes, they have these cameras and the ring, but it only captures if there is a motion.
Close enough? Okay.
Yeah. But some cameras are there, but it captures all. I don't know that.
Like a car, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A car.
Absolutely, good question. That's very important. And that's what we do. Like I mentioned earlier, our patrol forces and the field operations will go out and check the surrounding areas for cameras. Now, mind you, sometimes it's late at night, we want to wake someone up, or if we see a camera, they have a sheet, it's called a canvas form, and they'll fill out this sheet of all the houses they go to. Then when we get all those sheets in, we will go ahead and follow up and see if there's anything else we need to do, or in the daytime hours, we will go ahead, because it's more visible, and check for cameras. So I'm pretty certain the investigators did go out and walk that path to look for cameras. Sometimes the concerns are if it's not being stored, on a DVR or cloud storage, space is limited, that's where we lose that crucial information. We do have a program that I'll plug right now at the police department where you can register your cameras with the police department. So what happens when there's a major incident that happens, and all it is saying you have a device that's recording, we can pull up this list and just go to the homes that have it. It just saves us the extra step, and that's all it is. It's not you giving up any rights. It's just you saying, hey, I have a camera and I'm willing to help out my neighbors in my neighborhood, and here it is. We do have a program for that, and I believe it's on our website.
Thank you.
Any questions?
One more,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. The male and the female, are they cooperating with the investigation?
We're getting as much information as we can from both victims. That's as much as I can say with that. When I speak with my investigators, that's what they tell me. They're in a parking lot, and next thing you realize they were injured by gunfire. So there's not much they can share with us, but we are still working with them.
So you don't know if they knew the person that shot at them?
No, we do not.
Okay.
What are the age ranges of these people?
I don't know the specific age ranges, Mayor. I'd have to pull the report and look and see.
And one other thing, I think that people might be interested in, is this a one-off, situation, or has there been, evidence of, other types of gatherings of groups of people in this area, causing other kinds of issues?
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Is I think more of what we may be interested in, and what is the department planning to do to make sure that this doesn't end up being an area that is prime for the kind of activities we don't want to see in Santa Clara.
Good question. Here's what we've done. I know since this has happened, we've put out a message to our patrol teams, and they're going out to, for instance, Sobrado, if it's a gathering area, and they're patrolling that particular area. We believe with high visibility, people patrolling, and they see us out there, hopefully it will deter them from going and gathering at these locations. We try to do that with our spots like the parks, the libraries, and schools.
There was one night I pulled into, was it Lick Mill Park?
Yeah.
We pulled into Lick Mill Park and I was shining my headlights and there was all kinds of activity and I went, oh my God, what did we just, encounter here? And
Yes.
we just backed up and went and, we're looking for some police officers because there's some attractive, nuisance areas in town and I'm questioning about the Sobrado Living Center, is that going to become one, or is it one that, we need to take proactive steps to make sure we're patrolling and watching and letting them know they're not welcome here?
Absolutely, and I think this is the first proactive step we're taking right now, identifying, that is a gathering spot, from what it appears to be. We're talking about it. Let's identify a solution. Right now, in the police department, we have started with having our patrol folks go out there, document that they're patrolling that area so we can learn, is there any other things we need to be doing? Because once they get there, they can see what the activity level is. So we just started that not too long ago after the shooting happened. So we have to wait and see. But we're always open for suggestions if the community has any.
So to piggyback on what Mayor Gilmore said, ironically, I run with a friend who lives in the condo complex on the corner there, and she goes up and down Agnew a lot. And ironically, right, I think before that shooting happened, she was saying to me, have you noticed there's a lot of extra, particularly men, I'm sorry to point out that it's men, but she saw that, no, I noticed the same thing, standing out on the street on Agnew, just during the middle of the day, when I would think that people would be working on a regular weekday, congregating. And it was ironic because she and I both had that same thought. And I live in Doral Circle, so I come out onto Agnew, but she passes it a lot. And so I thought, that's very interesting. And then the shooting happened, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. There was a congregation of people. And so again, I'm just piggybacking on what you're saying, that seems new to me. Not that it is new, but it seems new that there's extra congregation of people.
Absolutely, good comment, and I'll respond to that. I think it goes back to what Vice Mayor said, see something, say something.
Yes,
in your minds, if you think that something is suspicious in nature, no matter what it may be, please call 911 and let us go out there. And two things can happen. If these folks are plotting to do something, we can prevent it, or we can identify what they're doing. They could be meeting there to go for a jog, meeting up to go to the movies, meeting up for whatever reason. But we've identified a problem, and the police department has responded. We've identified what they're doing. At best case scenario, we would know who they are because we fill out little cards called field interview cards. So if something does happen at that time of night, we know to go back to and talk to about it. So very, very important. I encourage folks to call 911 and get involved in your community.
And to piggyback on that one, anytime they see the police, the cars there, they will run through the downtown complex. They are hiding there near the trees and all. And we recently spent some money to put more lighting to discourage them, but we still see that they're coming in, they're smoking there, they leave all the trash, doing everything.
Please, and those types of things, you have to call us and let us know so
we call the non-emergency.
So we can increase our patrols because they could be, doing something else other than just smoking or eating, or they can be plotting to do some type of burglary.
You can see the smell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not to steal Assistant Chief's thunder, I know he may talk about this, but going back to what you were mentioning just now with you try to do some things with lighting and what have you, that's very important. I think having, your shrubs trimmed, having proper lighting. We have a section of our police department for crime prevention tips. And if there's any association that want to contact us, we have folks that we've sent them to classes in schools that are trained to let you know what's the best avenue to approach that from a crime prevention standpoint so those folks won't gather in those types of places.
Yeah, we are even thinking of removing the trees, which are like large trees, that's where they're hiding back.
Any questions regarding
No, that's fine.
the shooting that I can, I feel awful that I can't share more, but it is an active investigation.
I'm talking more overall. Could you tell us about the gang suppression unit we have in the police department?
Yes, we have a special enforcement team, and local gangs is what they deal with, because obviously we know gang members, what they do. So we do have a suppression unit. I call them our special enforcement team because that's what they do. And gang enforcement is one of the things that they take part in. They go to the countywide gang meetings. They stay up to date with the latest trends of what these members of the gangs are doing, and they bring it back to our department. They share it with our officers so they know things to look for.
Like graffiti, certain
Absolutely.
graffiti and things like that, so they can kind of track where
Absolutely,
they are.
Mayor. Graffiti, the type of clothing you're wearing, any trends with particular crimes they're starting to get involved with, and that's what that unit does and provides it to the department. And they're deemed our gang experts because when an incident happens, they can look at it and tell you, oh, that's so-and-so from this area. We know who they are. We can go in that area and start looking at those individuals.
I appreciate that you're looking forward and you're doing things now. That's most important, and it's more important than the question I've got. But I'm wondering if this was truly a one-off, if this just happened, crime came in the neighborhood and left, I don't think any of us we'd be upset, we'd be worried, we'd want to have a meeting, we'd want to find out. But that's the question, is this new? What are the statistics? Do you have statistics for what's going on in our neighborhood and specific to Sobrato?
Chief Dan Winter, Chief Dan will share that with you. He does have a slide presentation for that to share with you. I will mention we had, since you mentioned that about what's going on in the neighborhood, back in 2016, we did have another incident. Some of you may be aware of it. That happened at Sobrato. That was isolated because those two individuals were known to each other. Sobrato just happened to be the location where they decided to leave the vehicle at. So it was just a place to park a vehicle and leave a person deceased in the vehicle. There was no connection with the living center. So it just happened to be at Sobrato Living Center on the north side. That person could have dropped the vehicle off anywhere in the Bay Area. But those two individuals, the suspect and the victim, did know each other.
And they weren't residents at Sobrato?
No, they were not residents. There's no connection to Sobrato other than leaving the vehicle there. Any more questions? I'm getting the walk forward. Give me your mic look. Okay.
How often do you guys patrol out here? How often do you guys patrol out here up and down Lafayette Street and Agnew and all the other stuff? Because I don't see very many cars, cop cars, going up and down those streets.
I know this is beat 6. It's assigned to an officer to patrol. Many officers do patrol up here. I don't know what their patrol patterns are. The gentleman back there, I'm going to point to him right there. He's the beat 6 officer for the north side. He might be able to share with you, how he patrols a little bit. But each individual officer patrols differently, and they're given information of different areas that we're having issues with as far as crime, and they try to go to those areas and be a resource to try to help it. So that's one of the priorities for them to do, is to take care of that. For right now, we look at Sobrato Living Center, we get complaints at Licknell Park, we get complaints at Ulistack Park over there. So we try to move around as much as we can. And for officers, we don't want to get in a set pattern of at 8 o'clock we're going to be on this street, at 9 o'clock, because from an officer safety standpoint, that's just not healthy.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out is how many times do you actually go all the way down to the BMX track down there in that area and check the buildings? And because I hear nothing but cars racing up and down Lafayette that are, going all the way out to 237.
Good question.
And that's quite a bit. And it's later in the night. It's 11:30, 12 o'clock. I'm a night owl, so I'm up. I can hear that. So I'm just kind of curious how often you guys actually go all the way down, then come back in and hit the side streets in the residential areas.
Okay. First, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Officer Nicholas Schatz. I am one of the patrol officers that patrols up here on the north side, beat 6. To answer your question, I can't tell you for sure how many times I am up and down Lafayette and Agnew. I can say that I definitely cannot count on two hands how many times I'm in this area, especially that late at night. You said around 7 or 8 o'clock.
It's a little later than that. Sometimes it's 11 o'clock, 11:30, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you guys go in or you're off that time or what, but.
So I wouldn't be working around that time. I primarily work daytime hours for right now. We do have patrols that are up here. I can't speak for how many times they're, patrolling the areas, but we do like to hit the hot spots around here. Rivermark, we go to Mercado, and we're back and forth Agnew, because Agnew kind of connects us to Mercado and the Rivermark, so it's a good avenue for us to get back and forth. So we are up and down that street quite often during the night and throughout my shift. Lafayette is another good one. We are always up and down Lafayette as well. It's a main street to connect us down to the southern portion of the city. So those streets we are hitting quite often.
Because it seems like that's a perfect place for them to race, because it's just a straight shot, and you can get on it from all the way down from the overpass there all the way out to 237. I mean, it's a straight shot, and there's a lot of racing going on. So that's very important that gets stopped.
They were actually out there last night. I saw complaints on the Fairway Glen. Folks were posting about it this morning. The Fairway Glen folks were posting about it this morning, that there was up and down Lafayette last night. I mean, and they're out there usually around 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and it goes on for hours. And I understand, that they have ways of keeping track of police cars maybe in the area, but at the same time, it seems like it's becoming more of a habit than anything else, and they can, especially on a weekend, especially on a Friday night or a holiday, they're there. And so if somehow we could be more proactive as a city to know that, hey, they're going to be out there on such and such a night, be there and be able to address it, because I've heard of people being stranded, not being able to get to their house because of the action going on in Lafayette, and so there's there's a serious accident waiting to happen out there, and it just seems, like I said, it's happening a lot more frequent. It seems to be happening a lot more frequently than it has in the past, and I've even heard it at my house.
Absolutely, and that's something we need to get involved with and figure out how we can solve that. So I encourage the phone calls to come in, and if this is a recent, upstir in that type of activity, we have to put a plan out there to deter that. So good point. This was the beat-offs that patrols the north side, so it's just random, and they have hot spots, as he puts it, to go out and check, and that's where we put our resources, at work. But there's other officers that do come up here, just not only the Beat 6 officer. If he needs help, we have other officers that we put out extra resources up here as well. So we just don't say it's your beat, it's your problem. No, it's a problem for the police department as a whole to get to the root of it. So we will. I don't want to steal too much of the Assistant Chief's time talking about deployment issues. I did want to talk about this incident because I know it was near and dear to the folks' heart up here on the north side, but we are working very hard on this case. I talk to investigators every day. Is there anything else we could be doing? And there's nothing else. It just takes time for everything to fall in place. And I believe eventually we'll get the person and hold them accountable for what they did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Captain Clark. Appreciate it. I did want to go over crime statistics with you folks, because I thought that would be a question not only at Sobrato, but around the city and the surrounding area. So I did bring some stats to show you. Before I ever do stats, I always say that if you're the victim of one of these crimes, you're 100% a victim. It doesn't matter if our crimes are going down or up. If you've been a victim, you're 100% a victim, and definitely understand that. So as of October 2018, our Part 1 crime totals are slightly higher than last year, 1.4%. I don't know what our year-end totals are going to look like, but they were slightly higher. Our Part 1 crimes are your more serious crimes. Year to date, our auto burglaries, commercial burglaries, and robberies have all decreased, so we are definitely pleased with that. I will say that the auto burglary number is still way too high. We are still seeing way too many auto burglaries. I stopped at the Safeway here and ran in and got water and cookies, and I was even worried because I had all this stuff in the car, but I was able to park right in front. But you definitely do not leave valuables inside your cars in our city or any of the surrounding cities. The Bay Area, it's a Bay Area wide problem right now. So keep those valuables away. But thankfully, to date, because we've put a major focus on it, we have seen our auto burglaries decrease. And these stats are of December 19th is when I had these ran. So 6.2% decrease in auto burglaries, which is great, but still too high. Our current greatest citywide statistical concern is auto thefts. For whatever reason, we're seeing more cars being stolen in our city, about 60 more vehicles than last year when these stats were ran. Let's talk about calls for service at Sobrato, and that's what this graph will show you. We have not seen a significant increase over the last 4 years of calls. It looks like it peaked in about 2016 is when we saw the most calls for service. And through this year, through December 19th, we've seen about 69 calls. So we're not seeing a huge number of calls increase at Sobrato itself. And these are the types of calls that we've gone out there for this year. So we've done follow-up, disturbance calls, and disturbance calls can be either loud music, they can be a domestic violence, an argument, someone hearing loud arguing going on, that is a disturbance type call. Missing juveniles, we've had 9 of those out there, area checks, traffic stops. So we're not seeing a huge increase in this. These stats don't shock me as being overly significant for that particular complex. Let's look at our calls for service within a quarter mile. So this is our crime analyst draws basically a quarter mile circle around the area. Again, it looks like it peaked here in 2015. And then we've seen calls for service in that quarter mile area, go down a little bit. Not to say that you're not experiencing, an increase, and it sounds like some of those we're not getting phone calls on, like the racing and things like that. Please pick up the phone, call us so we can get out there. When you hear those noises going on, give us a call. But those are the stats there. Yes.
Do you include all the stadium-related calls, or do you pull them out?
Those would be the calls on here would be calls that have got put into our computer-aided dispatch system, so our CAD system. So it would be calls that would have originated from our public safety dispatch center on El Camino Real. Some stadium calls will get dispatched from the stadium, so they may not include the stadium calls in there. Yeah. And within a quarter mile Sobrato, these are the types of calls we're going on. There's 126 vehicle and pedestrian stops, about 75 disturbance type calls, area checks, traffic accidents. Thankfully only 1 robbery down there on the right. Only 1 stolen vehicle up here in this area, even though there's more coming on, and 8 vehicle burglaries up in that area. So that's what we're seeing within a quarter mile of Sobrato. Any questions about our overall crime stats? Yes.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay,
We're going to give you the mic.
Okay.
Okay, so we can catch on video.
I apologize, I'm doing a lot of talking. I've lived here for 15 years. I'm a very active person in my community, and at my school here, a local school.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, I have one thing to say that really, really disturbs me.
Okay.
And that is, we have these neighborhood watch signs that say, if you see something, say something. I 100% agree with that, and I have a big mouth, so I most often say something.
Uh-huh.
But disturbingly, I have called the police department, the non-emergency number, many times. They probably know my phone number there. But again, because I'm an active person, I feel like it's important. If I see something, say something.
Sure.
I live in Royal Circle. It's pretty, not private, but it's pretty private. Pretty much same people come and go. 45 houses, I believe. I know probably all of them. But many times I don't call anymore because I have been to feel like, from the person taking my phone call, which I know is a dispatch person, I have police officers in my family back in Michigan, so I understand the complexity of, I don't understand the complexity of your job, but I understand it somewhat. And by the time I'm done with the conversation, I feel like someone has made me feel like the criminal. Well, why are they suspicious? And I'm like, they don't live here. I mean, are they allowed to walk through the community? Absolutely. But when they're walking through Doyle Circle and looking in cars to see if the car door is locked in broad daylight at 2 o'clock, and I happen to be home, thankfully, that's suspicious to me, you know? And so I have learned now to scale back my calling. And I don't like that, because that's not who I am. I'm a very active person in my community. I don't want there to be people in my community that don't belong there. And so, again, I understand from your perspective and or the dispatcher's perspective, you have to go through this list. Someone explained to me one time, we have to go through top to bottom what they're wearing, what color hair they have. And sometimes I feel like saying, I don't know, but now they're leaving the circle, so now that I've tried to describe them to you, now they're gone. You know what I mean? So I have to ask you, as a concerned person in this community, or in the city of Santa Clara, period, that people that call, we want to call, but sometimes it's like, okay, if I call, I'm just going to get yelled at by the person that's on the phone. You do too.
Yeah, no, I want to apologize that that's been your experience with our dispatch center. First and foremost, my name and phone number is on that agenda and my email address. So please, if you experience anything like that, send me an email. Everything is recorded in that dispatch center. I'll pull up the recording. I'll listen to it. That's not the experience that we want you to have. I will tell you that the dispatchers have a very difficult job. If they don't get all the information, the officers are going to be asking for that information as they're going out there. So there is a laundry list of things that they're going to ask you, and they will ask you a bunch of questions that you may not know the answer to, but they should not make you feel the way that you feel right now. I'm a Santa Clara and I live here in town as well. I don't want my family to feel like that if they call in something suspicious. But certainly someone looking into car windows, seeing if they're locked or not, that is definitely suspicious. That is something you should call in. We want those types of calls. We want to prevent those auto burglaries. So please continue to call. If you have a bad experience, please send me an email. I will look into it. I will get back to you. We don't want you having that experience. You should feel like you should call in. They are going to ask you, I will tell you, they're going to ask you a ton of questions. If I call in, I'm like, okay, what was the person wearing? What was their sweatshirt? What was their, I mean, it's a lot. It's like, I don't remember. They were, even me, I don't remember everything that they're going to ask me. But they're going to ask a question because maybe you do. Maybe you're one of those people with a photographic memory, and maybe you will have that piece of information that will help the officers find that person. So I want to apologize for that experience that you've experienced. Please continue to call in. We want those suspicious calls coming in. And if you have a bad experience, just let me know, and I will look into it and have my communications manager look into it. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions about the statistics before? Yes.
Do you have any idea who commits this crime, or is mostly people who live in Santa Clara, or people from another area?
It depends on the crime. Obviously, domestic violence, that's going to be folks that live in the area that are committing those because they're committing those in their homes typically. I will say that with some of the auto burglaries, we did discover that we were getting hit from folks from the East Bay. They realize that this is the high-tech capital of the world down here, especially during the weekdays. They target our high-tech folks that go to lunches and throw their company-issued laptop on the front seat and go in and have lunch. And we found purses and things have been located in the East Bay later on because they'll come here, they're looking for easy freeway access, they'll come in, burglarize vehicles, jump back on the road and head back there. Certainly we have folks from San Jose that come in groups and things like that, but there's no specific, other than that we did have one group that was specifically targeting our city for auto burglaries. It's more of a spread out type thing. Yes? Sure.
I'm just looking at them. If I take out the things like vehicle or pedestrian stop or traffic accident, non-violent sort of things.
Sure.
Not really suspicious, just stuff that needs to be addressed. And then I divide that by the number of calls to Sbrata. It looks like about 15% of the problems are coming from Sbrata. Now, my math could be wrong.
Okay.
I admit that. But it looks like there's a concentrated issue there. Am I wrong? And I'm not asking you to check my math. Do you feel that there's a concentrated issues there, or no?
I don't. I mean, we're going to get calls at any apartment complex. We get serious. We get calls of those types that I see at Sobrato at all our apartment complexes in town. Are those maybe slightly higher? I think the missing juvenile number jumped out at me. To have that many missing kids in one complex is probably a little bit high. It means that maybe they're having some difficulty with their kids more than in other complexes. But to have, I think it was 12 disturbance calls over the year, I think is, to have 12 disturbance calls, that doesn't surprise me for an apartment complex that size. Maybe slightly higher.
Okay.
But no, and I spoke to the beat officer up here, Officer Schatz, before the meeting began, and he doesn't see significant calls for service in that area where he's going out there on a daily basis. Oh no, not there again.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
All right. And I'm happy to answer more questions, but I think maybe what we have with us, we have the CEO of Home First that runs Sobrato, and she's here, and she's going to talk to you about Sobrato, and maybe that'll answer some of your questions. And then I'm happy to come back up afterwards and answer more. We're very pleased that she could join us and answer your questions and talk a little bit about the Living Center. So, Andrea, if you could come up.
Thank you, everybody, and I appreciate you all being here. Sorry, I apologize for my voice. Like everyone else, I've been homesick, right? So I'm here to talk a little bit about Home First and to answer any questions that I can for you about Sobrato Family Living Center. So Home First Services is the largest provider of homelessness services in Santa Clara County. We've been running the county's cold weather shelters for about 22 years now. We have 9 locations across the county. We have a continuum of care that we offer that we're very proud of. It's in 3 buckets divided in our business model. First is emergency shelter and cold weather shelter services. Second is supportive services. That includes outreach services to encampments, housing searches, case management, and other supportive services, including our veteran services. And we are the largest provider of services to veterans and their families who are homeless. And our third bucket of services is our transitional and permanent housing facilities, which we have 3 of. We have Sobrato Family Living Center here in Santa Clara, which is 51 units. We have Bacardo Family Living Center in San Martin, which is 25 units. And we have Sobrato House in downtown San Jose, which is 10 units of affordable housing for transitional age youth who have aged out of the foster care system. So that in a nutshell is Home First. We serve over 5,000 folks a year. Sobrato Family Living Center is actually a facility we're very proud of. And yes, we can always do things differently, and we're more than welcome to hear any ideas that you have. We have been operating since for about 39 years now. And Sobrato Family Living Center was actually a property that was created to house formerly homeless families. We have shifted into affordable housing over the years, but we do pride ourselves in saying that many of the folks living at Sobrato Family Living Center would be homeless if they didn't have access to affordable housing that we offer. We have a very rigid screening criteria, so no felonies. The only felony that we do accept is drunken driving, as long as you're managing that and working on that. Misdemeanors, child sex offenders, none of those things are accepted. So we do our best to create an environment that is family-centered. 2 years ago, we did see an increase in incidences, quite honestly, at the Living Center. And it was because we had a group of teenagers and younger kids who had kind of formed a little gang. And they had done a breaking and entering next door. And we were mortified. So we worked with those families and we evicted every single youth and their family. Unfortunately, we had no choice. It's our responsibility to help create a safe community, right? Since then, the past 2 years, we have had only 5 incidences at the Living Center. And I wanted to make sure I shared them with you so you could understand the type of incidences that we have there. So the first incident was breaking and entering. The police were called and they entered through an unlocked sliding glass door. The second incident was an altercation between 2 residents. The third was an altercation between the same 2 residents and the one decided it was a good idea to set the car on fire. That person was evicted immediately. The fourth incident was a juvenile resident who was leaving the parking lot in their car, caused a traffic accident, and fled from the scene because they were afraid. They were apprehended and everything was managed appropriately. And the fifth incident was a tree branch fell on a resident's car. We did have another incident, I thought it was in late 2015, where unfortunately a deceased male was found in a car in our back parking lot. He was identified the next morning by staff. We informed the police. Nobody at the center knew him, and he had never been a resident there. So again, I agree with the officer, it was just a place that they could drop him off. At this facility, we have an after-hours on-site manager, Victor Hernandez, and his wife. Every night before they go to bed, they walk the property, not only for trash, but they walk the remote areas too to make sure that we don't have youth congregating where they're not supposed to be congregating, and to make sure that the noise levels in the apartments are managed appropriately and nobody's being a nuisance. Victor and his wife did the walk the night of the shooting at between 10 and 10:30. They didn't see anything suspicious on the site in any way, shape, or form. Their apartment is actually adjacent to the parking lot where the incident occurred. They were woken up at the time of the shooting, but they didn't hear the people in the parking lot beforehand, so they were being relatively quiet, unfortunately, because if we would have heard them, we would have gone outside, moved them along, or called the police. So that's, I think, the information I have. I'd like to answer questions, if I may, for anyone. Yes?
First of all, thank you for coming today.
Of course.
Many apartment complexes have security guards that, thank you. Many apartment complexes have security guards that, you know, roam the premises during the, have you thought about doing something like that?
We have thought about doing something like that, but the 5 incidences that we've had, actually, it doesn't make sense for us to spend the money on the cost, because it's, for one guard, part-time, it's over $100,000 a year. And that's a huge expense when we don't have the incidences that bear out that kind of cost. If we were having a problem like that, we would absolutely do that.
Now, you said that there was a little gang that formed in your complex, and that you took
immediate
steps,
action.
Immediate action to get rid of them. Do you do any kind of screening for gangs or gang residents? Prior to residency?
Well, if there's a criminal record, then they wouldn't be allowed to rent an apartment at Sobrato Family Living Center. If they don't have a criminal record, then we would have no way of knowing that they were in a gang, just like any other apartment. We have a list of affordable housing laws that we need to adhere to, and we use them. So if we would know, we would watch that person, but there's no way for us to know when we rent to a parent that their kid might be involved in a gang. If we find out, then what we do is counsel the parent and provide them with a lease violation if their child did anything inappropriate on the property.
I would just suggest that some kind of security be engaged in the future, because this was a really serious situation that maybe could have been prevented, or future situations could be prevented with just the presence of our police department, security guard, you know, all those situations. It's just a different world now, and I know, like I said, in many complexes there are security, whether it's residential complexes or retail commercial complexes engage in security for many reasons.
How about cameras? I'm surprised that you don't have cameras.
We don't have cameras. We haven't had great luck at our facilities with cameras. Often by the time we've been notified that the police want to see our footage, it's been written over or erased because of the system. It has to, there's a certain time frame. We can look into getting a security camera.
You can see what's going on, and not just the police. I mean,
Right, yeah, absolutely. The problem is you have to pay for a person to sit and monitor a camera, and that's not something we'll be able to do.
30 days is, have the police reviewed longer than 30 days?
We normally have, cameras at our Sobrato Family Living, or at our Sobrato house, and then at our Bacardo Family Living Center, and I believe the time frame is 2 weeks.
But that just depends on the system you use.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
I mean, and it's not expensive. I've got multiple cameras at my house. I can go back 30 days. It's cheap. I pay for it myself.
Okay.
I'm stunned that a corporation like yours isn't paying for 30 days worth of video.
We will definitely look into it.
Thank you, Andrea. And I concur. You know, the cameras I think would be a big help. One of the reasons why I asked Sudar to be here today is because he, along with several other folks, reached out to me back channel after, you know, we shared the information and the press release came out, letting me know about their experience just walking by Sobrato in general, and they have not had pleasant experiences. They don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe. And that's a big concern, because this is not an area where we don't want people to feel safe walking in the neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And so to have some proactivity, you know, taking place so that people can walk up to Safeway, you know, from Cheney Street, you know, is really important. And so, I mean, whatever we can do, even as a city, you know, to help you implement that, or talk with the police department, you know, to take some actions, would be wonderful. Let me ask you also, from getting more information about the people that are living at Sobrato Family Living Center, I understand it's going from transitional housing to permanent housing, but it hasn't quite all taken place.
So we made the request, so there's 51 units, and it's divided into parcels, and there's several different parcels. So we've got SFLC 1, 2, and 3. SFLC 1 is 33 units. That has transitioned to permanent housing. And we did that because there had been an increase in events at the property, incidences. So when somebody is in transitional housing, they're basically living from day to day because they don't know where they're going to end up. So they're not invested in the property, and they're not invested in the community. And so we decided to lobby with the city. It took several years before we were granted the permission to make it those 33 units. We immediately requested to have the other 18 units made permanent. We just received word that it looks like that's going to happen. And again, you'll see a higher level of engagement in the people living there because they know that they're going to be able to stay there. We just had the Santa Clara City Housing Department out to tour the property, I want to say 2 months ago, maybe 3. They gave us a 5-star rating and said the property was great, it was run well, and it was a place that they couldn't tell was affordable housing from the outside because the property was so well maintained. And I'd like to address the safety concerns. So I would really like to encourage you that if anybody ever walks by Sobrato Family Living Center and they see something they don't like, please go into the office and make an incident report. If you make an incident report, we can gather the data, we can track it, and we can hold those people accountable. We can give them lease violations, and we can move them on. Because we don't want that type of activity on our property in any way. We want everybody to be safe. So I really do appreciate that. Please feel free anytime. My phone number's on the website. You can always call me if there's an incident there. I'll fill out the incident report for you, but that way I'll be aware of it. I've had no calls from the community. I've had no emails from the community since we made it permanent, and we only have the 5 incidences listed here that have occurred in 2 years. So we have no way of knowing that there's an issue unless somebody tells us.
And just a final question then, if there was an incident and it involved somebody that's there permanently, are they under those same restrictions or rules that they would be asked to leave as a result?
Absolutely. All tenants are held to the same rules. You know, there's no drinking in public spaces, so when the investigation is done, and so far we haven't been told that any of our residents were there. It looks like people were passing through the neighborhood. Somebody might have been visiting somebody there. That's all we know right now. If we're given that information, we can take action on it. Because this is a serious offense, whoever would be involved would be evicted immediately, of course. So there's no drinking in public spaces, there's no drugs in public spaces, city noise ordinance 10 to 8, same thing as with any other complex.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was great, but the problem is all the spilling over into our community.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, sir.
So all the issues, the kids coming there into our community and they're doing all the drinking, littering, trashing. So the kids live there in Sabrato.
So are you able, do you know that it's the Sobrato Family Living Center kids for a fact? I take a picture, send it to me, and we'll figure out who the kid is and we'll do a lease violation.
Yeah, so we called a number of times like the non-emergency line and we reported these incidents. By the time cops came, they're gone. Very hard to...
it is.
Yeah.
You're right. So if you can take a picture with your phone of the youth...
I don't want to take that risk.
Then I can't help. I mean, if you're able to let me know what's happening, or I had a resident, before we made it permanent, the same thing was happening on the other side. Resident took a picture of the kids, that's how we were able to identify them and evict them. But if I don't have...
Yeah, we were thinking of putting the camera so at least we can record it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. Send me the pictures. We'll do lease violations. We'll make it happen. We'll
I mean,
get it
whatever
out.
you guys doing, great, but we want that is a safer to all of us.
Yes.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have several things. I apologize, but I wrote
That's
them
all right.
down before I came.
And I just want to say thank you for being here. I believe you might have been at the meeting, the HOA meeting at the Don Calajon Library.
I was.
About 3 years ago.
Yes.
And that family's not here, the house that was broken into on Doyle Circle, that we identified as
Yes.
Sobrato children because they chased them out and chased them around.
Right.
Okay, so they would love to be here, Sherry and Frank Malloy. I'm speaking hopefully on behalf of them. Yes, I know. So, and as several other people as well. So they're on vacation, and so I'm here I am for them. Okay, so I'm going back to that. Again, the 5 incidences I get the calling. But I do know, and that's, I'm going to piggyback on what you said too, and Kathy said, so there's criteria for getting in. But are those criteria followed for staying in? And that's my thing. With children, it's I know questionable because if they're minors and all these things. So like I said earlier to Assistant Chief Winter, I'm very involved in the school, so I know a lot of children, and a lot of children in the community and at the school, but I also know a lot of the children who live in Sobrato, and I actually have made friends with them and their parents, and so I have a connection with these kids. I used to be a teacher myself, so I know how important it is to have connections with children. So I just have a few things that I want to read off to you that may have not been put in your records. But number 1 is the house burglary in Doyle Circle, which I live in Doyle Circle right behind Sherry and Frank. Very disturbing. Number 2 is a family that lives, and again, they're on vacation as well, a family that lives in Doyle Circle literally right over the wall, which that was an issue with the climbing of the wall, and now we've got trees up there. Our HOA got the trees up, and there really isn't
We put up the bird spikes.
I did too.
everything,
Okay,
and-
so great. Thank you for that. They don't typically come over there now. However, apparently there was trash being thrown from the wall over to Maggie and Dan's backyard, which is the house right there.
Yeah, that was 3 years ago.
Okay, and also a couple of years ago, there were, so in Doyle Circle we have that little output kind of, which kind of goes to that wall there, and kids will play in there sometimes. Apparently there was a bottle thrown at one of my neighbors' kids. Okay. Now there is a young man, and I'm happy to tell you his name, because now I know his name, and I'm not going to say it in public, but he's also a student here at Don Calajon. I called the police. I physically saw him on Garrity in the broad daylight, 2 or 3 o'clock. I didn't know who he was at the time, but now I know who he is. Picked up a package off of one of my neighbor's porches on Garrity Way. I was coming out of Doyle Circle onto Garrity Way to make a right onto Agnew. I literally saw him pick up the package from the porch. This has been several months now, okay? I called the police right away. I would have liked to have taken a picture of him, but he had a hood on over his head. Young, probably, I actually know he's not, he's in 8th grade. But he's a small kid, small 8th grader. To try to take a picture from my car, I couldn't. He saw me that I was following him, so that's another issue. Like these kids know me oftentimes, and I don't want to be the one that like, oh, we know where you live. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay, so I did take a picture from him. I did call the police immediately at that moment and try to describe him. In the meantime, he's running now because he sees me down Agnew. He literally takes the package, drops it in the back of one of the Sobrato apartments. Okay. After that, I let it go. I called the police on it because how can you identify him? I tried to describe him. He had a hood on. I couldn't see his face. But now I know who he is, so I haven't called the police back to tell them who he is. I know him. I feel horrible to rat him out, but I will share that information privately with you all.
He's a resident at Sobrato Family?
He must be. I mean, he ran there. I don't know. Okay, I'm probably 85% positive he is because he's a student at Don Calajon, and I see him walk to and from almost daily. I'll just say that, or ride his bike. So he's coming from that area. I'm not sure where he's coming from, but I'm assuming down from Agnew. Also on the 4th of July, and I know a lot of you guys can probably attest to this, we saw lots of activity in the parking lot of Sobrato, letting off what sounded like a bomb. Now I realize I'm a dork, like I don't do fireworks and stuff, but my husband was like, this thing is illegal, whatever it is. It was loud, and it sounded like a bomb or a shotgun, and I heard the night of the disturbance too, I heard that gunshot. I don't know what gunshot sounds like because thank goodness I'm not familiar with it that much. Okay, so that was another one. There's another family who, again, I know, and I won't share their name out loud. I know this family. I don't know the parents as well as I know the children who attend our school. I know they still live there. One of them I know has been expelled from our school several times. So my question to you, and you don't have to answer it, but just sort of a question to throw out there is, at what point, if these children become a nuisance to the schools, which again, I know Santa Clara Unified has to be involved in this too, they just keep moving them around. And as the movie Waiting for Superman calls it, pass the trash. It's horrible to say that. I don't like to say that from a kid's perspective. But I am almost positive they're still living there. And it's a very troubled family. I know they are. I know the kids. And there's 4 boys, I think. Maybe there's a 5th boy. They have a lot going on. I tutored one of the boys at school. They have a lot going on. There's another family, again, who I tutored, a young lady. And she was in my daughter's class last year. Again, I try to connect with her because I have a heart for children in general, especially those that come from areas that are not serviced, or children who are not coming from good families. They would drop her off at school, and then I run on that trail almost every morning up behind Damien Park. Her parents are up there, and I know they're her parents because I know her parents. I introduced myself to them. They're drinking beer at 9 o'clock in the morning and smoking. And these are the kinds of things that we can't control everybody's lifestyle, but those are the kinds of things that, like, if those are the kinds of residents that are there, that's not helping those children. And then my last thing is, one day last school year, coming down Garrity Way, once again, I was walking home with my son, I caught 2 to 3 kids, and again, I know them. One of them is the family of the boys. I know them, and because I am who I am, I confronted them. They were crawling out of a house on Garrity Way's garage, which is on the back. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm trying to be cool with them. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they said, oh, nothing, we dropped our backpack in there. I'm like, well, why would your backpack, so it's that conversation. Again, I don't think I called the police because I forced them to go to the person's front door and knock on her door and apologize to her and say, I was in your garage. So these incidents don't...
Were they residents again?
Yes,
Sobrato?
yes,
Okay.
because I know who they are.
Okay, so those would be great things for us to find out. So first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. I do hear that. I'm going to try to address it as I kind of remember it. If I'm wrong, let me know. So the incidences that happened 3 years ago, those were all addressed. We worked very closely with the homeowner and the other homeowner who had trash thrown in their yard. They took pictures of the kids, we gave them lease violations, and we evicted them. So that's why that hasn't been occurring again. We did everything we could to make to stop the flow of kids from one property to another. We put up the bird spikes on the fences, and we also put no trespassing signs on our side of the property. We also sent out letters to all the residents letting them know that if this kind of trouble persists, that the families will receive lease violations and evictions based on their children's behavior. So as far as I know at this point in time, that behavior has stopped. Nobody has called me. I've heard nothing else. I remember us speaking several years ago, several times, and I appreciated the phone calls. So we managed that. Doesn't say that things still don't happen, and I get that. So there are 51 units, and we might have a couple of troubled families, I'm sure we do, living in those units. Unfortunately, there's troubled families living everywhere across the county. We only have so much that we can do legally. If parents choose to drink at 9 a.m. in the morning, that's a call to Child Protective Services. There's nothing I can do about that. It wasn't happening on the property. It's happening at a school. Is it unfortunate?
I let the school know right away.
Great, thank you. So it's horribly unfortunate. We have no control over how these people live their lives. Again, if it impacts the neighborhood and the community, that's where we're able to take action. So if you can let me know what kids have done what, and the ones you think might be living at our center, we'll ask around. Our property manager knows every single family. She will take the picture around. We will find out. And if they were involved in something, the family will receive a lease violation. That's the only way legally we can get people out of there who don't belong. But we want to help, so please communicate with me, email with me. You can call me, my number's on the website. Sure. Or anything else? I know I'm taking up a lot of time. All right, thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you very much. I think that ends our formal presentation. Are there any other questions I can answer? I don't know if Mayor or Vice Mayor want the last word before we close up. A couple takeaways I've taken real quick is that we need to focus on the racing issue up here in the north end. We will put some focus on that. If you hear them up there, please give us a call. We have a way of sending our officers out there without going over the radio. We can send a computer message out that the racers don't get because they do monitor our scanner. So we will focus on that. Please introduce yourself to Officer Schatz before you go. He is up here. This is his beat, so please introduce yourself to him, get to know him. He wants to know the people that he's serving up here on the north end. Good. Well, did you want to close? Yes.
Thank you. I don't want to.
Mic. All right.
I'll just use the mic. A couple of takeaways that that I'm hearing, and I just want to reiterate. Well, I know you and I had talked about it, but I'll just bring it up. And along with something else, one thing that makes our community really special, and especially here in the North Side, is we have so many diverse cultures, and as a result of that, a lot of folks don't know how to react when things happen, and I think you may have encountered this, Sudar, and it's really important. Like some of the numbers that I saw up there, like theft, for instance, I think that number should be a lot higher, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen postings about jewelry being snatched in the community, and they write about it after the fact. And you can't do anything after the fact. You have to do it right there and then, and so that people can take some action. And so just because you may not know sometimes what's the right thing to do, don't second guess yourself. Just do it. And I'm saying this because I know that this is going to go out into the community. Call the non-emergency number. You don't have, for something like that, you don't need to call 911. But call the non-emergency number and report it, because nothing can be done if you don't report it. Like, Assistant Chief Winter was saying, like Andrea was saying, if you don't contact people and let them know what you're seeing or hearing, then nothing can be done. The other thing that I just wanted to also just reiterate again is graffiti. Graffiti is a sign of, it's a tagging. It's a sign of potential gangs in the area, and I hate to say it, but there are gangs in our city, and so they have way of marking territories, and there have been some markings in the area, and that was one of the reasons why I really wanted that tag takedown off of the wall, which was adjacent to Don Calajohn's school. And so, but there are others in the area. There have been some down on Agnew Park, down by Bob's Market, for instance, had graffiti, and fortunately the owner took action right away and got it taken down. But the city will take care of these things. There are many applications. If you're not familiar with My Santa Clara on your iPhone, please download it. And there are so many different things that you can report besides graffiti: noise disturbances, garbage, drunkenness. I mean, just so many different things that people wouldn't normally report. You can report it, and it will get taken care of. We really, we understand the importance of taking care of everybody, and we want to do that. That was one of the purposes of Sobrato and Riverwalk, so people will have nice places to live, and we want those people there. But at the same time, we still have to be responsible. We still have to provide for the safety of our community and make sure it is safe. So that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate the assistant chief being here today, and Captain Clark. I think it looks like he left, but but he's patrolling, exactly. But this is very important, and the north side is one of the things I found out when I was running was that people felt like the north side was neglected for so long. Well, you know what? You're not being neglected anymore, and so we need to address these issues, and we need to take care of our neighborhoods. We need to protect our neighborhoods, and so this is one way that we do it, and it's so easy to do. So anyway, thank you, Andrea. I think going forward, we're just going to reiterate, just the importance of contacting, reaching out to Home First, and also the police department, and so that people know that that things will be taken care of, but it'll only get taken care of if you report it. So thank you very much.